Okay, everybody. We're going to be doing sorry, this is not correct. This should be 7.3 up here. Polynomial inequalities. So you're going to use what you've learned before in 7.1 and 7.2, combine all that knowledge that you learned with previous knowledge on interval notation to solving the following inequalities. So the first thing you want to do is you want to it's not mandatory, but I highly recommend every time you do this that you set this up so you know what the graph should look like. So, and it's good practice too. So the degree of this one would be, so I count the exponents, there's a 2, a 3. I don't see one here, but if I put a 1 there, then I know I can add that one. So x plus 3 is really raised to the first power. So we have 2 plus 3 plus 1, so we have a degree of 6. Okay, leading coefficient. Leading coefficient is we just want positive or negative of the coefficient that's in front of this very beginning right here. So it's right here. And that means it's positive. So we're just going to plus. We don't really need the number. We just want to know which way it goes. Now these two kind of help us determine our end behavior. It's an even degree with a positive leading coefficient. So that means my end behavior must be up, up. Okay. Now let's talk about the zeros. We've been doing zeros quite a bit, and you do this a lot in algebra too. But finding the zeros, we're just going to look at each of these little factors here. So if you, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this together. If you look at this one, this 0 here, whenever you have that a variable outside, it's not in the, it's not a binomial like this other two, that's going to always be 0. So that 0 is a 0. At the same time, I'm going to talk about the multiplicity. So I look at the exponent. This has an exponent of 2. It's right here. So this multiplicity is 2. Okay. My second one, I have a 0 of, this 0 is going to be 2. This one is a 0. And its multiplicity is actually a 3. This 0 right here is a negative 3 at that point. And so that multiplicity, so we have a 0 of 0 of negative 3 with a multiplicity of 1. So finding all that will help us to do this. So the second thing you're going to do, so finding all that is going to be very important. The zeros, you definitely, no matter what, you have to find these because you cannot graph if you don't find these zeros. Okay, so now the second thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a number line. And we're going to plot those zeros. It's a nice straight number line. You don't really have to have the x and the y-axis, just have this 9. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plot our little zeros here. Well, I have 3 of it, 1, 2, 3. So my first one, so I'm just going to put 3 little points. It doesn't matter what it looks like, the lines, excuse me. But it has to go in numerical order from least to greatest. So negative 3 here, a 0 here, and a 2 here. Now at this point, we're going to graph it. So at this negative 3, if it's a multiplicity of 1, then it's only going to go through the graph, okay? So just going to put through. Okay. If I have a multiplicity, this next one is a multiplicity of 3, so we have a twist at that 0. And this is a square, so we have a bounce at that 0. So that's important when you're graphing these, you've got to know which one of those. So at negative 3, it's just going to go through, and I'm going to go down. At 0, though, because it bounces, it's going to bounce there. Now at this one, we're going to have a twist. So make a little twist there, okay? Now obviously it's not going to be as perfect. It's not going to be, but make sure at those points where it's very important that we can see the twist. So right here, these are 3 zeros we have. 1, 2, 3. Now what we're going to do is go back up to this inequality, okay? So this time this function is less than or equal to 0, okay? If it's less than, we're going to shade below. So I'm going to use a different color, and I'm going to shade below this line. So what's below? Here, here, all the way to here. Now I have a thing I have to think about. I have an equal to sign up here because it's less than or equal to. So that means those numbers are included. So what I do is I put a circle around them to tell myself, hey, that's going to be, I need to count those. When I use them, I got to think about these values as well. Okay, so we're going to start from the left, got an interval notation. We're going to start from the left. The smallest number we have is a -3, and it's a bracket because it's included. And all this is below the graph. Everything we see is below the graph, the blue. And we're going to go all the way up to the number 2. Okay? Okay, let's go to number 2. Okay, same thing we're going to do. We're going to find our degree, all those things that we have over here. So my degree, I'm just going to write this, my leading coefficient, and behavior, and my zeros. All right. Okay, so my degree, again, I have a 1 here, a 1 here, and a 3. So 1 plus 1 plus 3 is a 3, 4, 5, okay? Now, look in the front here. Is that a positive or negative? It's a positive, so leading coefficient is positive. So if I have an odd number, odd degree, excuse me, my leading coefficient is positive, the graph in behavior must be down, up. Okay, and then let's look at our zeros. Our first 0 we have here is x minus 4. So this is a 4, and let's just state the multiplicity as we go. Multiplicity is a 1. The next one is a 1. My 0 is 1, and my multiplicity is 1. My last one is a -3, but my multiplicity is a 3. Get that information? Now we graph. Okay, list the values that we have. Make sure you give yourself enough room to draw the graph, because sometimes it'll be above and below. Too much of it. So I have -3, so I have 3 zeros. Here's 1, here's 1, here's 1. This is -3. This is 1, and this is a 4. So now when I go to graph this, I have to look at the in behavior. Okay, so it is a down, up, and so forth. So let's look at this one. This point for each of these zeros, what's happening at them. This one goes through because it's multiplicity of 1. Another one that goes through. But this is a multiplicity of 3, so this is the one that has a twist. Again, I'm not going to write, you don't have to write that every time. We'll make sure we understand which one we're doing. So at -3, I have a twist. So, and it has to be down, up. So I got to start from the bottom, go up, and then twist. And then I'm going to go up. I have to go through this one, and through this one. But make sure you see the twist, okay? And then now, what am I shading? I have to shade greater. So I have to look at the area where it's greater than that line. So things that are greater starts here at 3, goes down to that 1. I bet I don't go anymore, but then I got to jump over here to the 4 and shade that. Now I got to look at my points. Do they get to be included like they did on number 1? And the answer is no, because I have a greater than sign only, no equal. So make sure you know that you're not including these points. Mark it, do it, whatever you need to know to make sure to remind yourself what's happening. So now what we do on this one, we're going to start from the left. The smallest number we get to be is at close, it's -3, but it's not included, so it's parentheses to 1, to this one over here. Then we skip, we go union, all the way over to the 4, but it's not included, so it's got to be parentheses, to positive infinity. Infinities always have parentheses. So there's our solution. We're going to want to see both of this. So show the graph, show your, and then show your definite inequalities. You need to show the zeros as well, because most of the time they're going to ask you what are the zeros. Okay, so number 3, it's slightly different than the other ones. We can find a few of these things over here, but we can't find our zeros. We can find the degree, the leading coefficient, and the end behavior with what we have. So when we remember the degree of a polynomial in standard form, we look for the highest degree, and that's your degree of your coefficient. So look at the highest variable, look at that term. This is the highest variable, the 3 is. So that's our degree. Leading coefficient is what's in front of it, positive or negative. Well, that's actually -1 if we want to be technical. So it's a negative. So if it's a cubic, an odd, and the end behavior would be, and it's negative, our end behavior will be up and then down. Now, the zeros on here you can't find just like that. You can't find zeros in standard form like this, so we have to factor. Okay, so we have 4 terms. So if we have 4 terms, we can think of doing factor by grouping. So I'm going to group this one and this one together. So depending on how you like to look at this, so I'm just going to look and factor out the greatest common factor between these two is a 4. And that leaves me with an x plus 5. And here, it's kind of my hint, I need this to be positive, this one to be positive. So they do have a negative in common, so we can factor that out, and then an x squared. And that will leave us as a 5 plus x. And 5 plus x and x plus 5 are the same thing if we just rearrange it, okay? So these are the same. So now I factor out again what I have in common. The thing I have in common, my GCF, is x plus 5. And this leaves me with a 4 minus x squared. And that is less than 0. Okay? Now, this 4 minus x squared looks kind of unusual. We need to factor that to see all the factors and make sure that we have all the degrees, the multiplicity of each part. So when I factor this is a difference of squares. You don't have to rearrange it. You don't want to, and I won't, only because I don't have to worry about that when I find a 0. Okay? So if we look at the zeros now, okay, multiplicity of each, and we'll go from there. So if we look at the 0, the first one, we have a 0 of -5. And this is a multiplicity. This is a 1, this is a 1, this is a 1. Now, one thing nice about this, it doesn't matter on these if you can't tell. What's going to make this a 0 by making this one? So this is actually going to be a 2, and this is -2. That's what makes a 0 in that parentheses. So I have a multiplicity, a 0 at 2 with the multiplicity of 1, and then a -2 with the multiplicity of 1. Now, just in case this, no, we'll just leave it like that. So I'm going to now just draw my graph. And I'm going to plot my zeros. So I have -5, I have a -2, I have a 2, and they all have a multiplicity of 1, so we're going straight through them. Okay? So if it's down, I'm going up, down, so my end behavior is going to go like that, come through this one, come up this one, and come back down. Now, because it's just less than, I do not get to include those values. And then lastly, shade. It's less than, so it'll be below. So we're going to go from here to here, and then here to here. Start from the left. The smallest number is a -5. It's not included, so it's a parentheses. To my 2, excuse me, -2, parentheses. And then union, I started at 2, but it's not included, so it's parentheses to positive infinity, which is a parentheses. Okay, so the next part is, again, same kind of thing. This time we're going to talk about same stuff. So let's find, we have a degree. Now we look at each term. This is the highest exponent, so the degree is 3. Doesn't matter if there's nothing like a constant. All of them, you look at each one separately. This is not in factored form. So my leading coefficient is positive, because that's a +9 in front. My in behavior is odd. It's got that, so it's going to go down, then up. Okay? We got to find our zeros, but we can't do that in this form. So first thing to do, we're going to find a GCF. We're going to take that out, which is an x, because you don't know how to factor unless it's a quadratic, at least not yet. Okay, so now we got to factor that quadratic, and I know 3x plus 2, 3x plus 2. It has to be a plus plus because this is a plus plus. Now, these two right here are the same. Okay, so if we need to change that because we're talking a lot about multiplicity. So we need those changed so that we can see what the multiplicity is. So if I have 2 of them, then we multiply together, then we are just squaring those. Okay, so found the degree. Now we got to find the zeros. Excuse me, this is equal to. So this is a 0 of 0 with a multiplicity of 1. The next one for this multiplicity, let's look at the 0. So if you need to find a 0, this one you can't look at it and see it. So remember, set equal to 0, and then solve for x. X equals a -2/3. So I have a 0 of -2/3, and my multiplicity is a 2. So again, looking at the exponents for the multiplicity. So now let's graph it. I'll graph it over here since I took up a lot of space. Let me do a different color. Okay, here's my graph. I'll graph my zeros. I only have 2. I don't know why it's so big. But I want -2/3, and I have one at 0. I put it down there. Okay, so I am shading greater than, but I got to draw it first. So at x, we're going to cross through it, but at -2/3, we have to bounce because we have an even multiplicity. So here I'm going to come up, I'm going to bounce, come back down, and go through. So these are my zeros. Okay, and I'm going to shade greater. So this is the only part that I see it's greater, as in definitely I can tell. But because I'm allowed to be equal to it because of this symbol here, this is a value and this is a value. You have to do all those. Okay? So if we look at the value, let's look at the one on the, let's look at this one with the 0. I know it's going to be 0 with a bracket to infinity. But now I got to look at the other side. It's got to be a union. Now, if I just have a point and it's included, it's not going anywhere, it's just that dot itself, I'm going to have to make it a bracket, negative 2/3. So this is our solution. Oops. Oh, no. Okay, does everybody see the solution there? I messed up my... Okay.